Okay, floodgates are opening. I've just started broadcasting the webinar here. We'll give you a few minutes for everybody to come in. It's bright and early here in Sydney, and we've got I've got my colleague Jeremy on the line in LA and our guest speaker today in LA, so it's their afternoon. I can see people flooding in. If you are joining us, please just say hi in the chat. Let us know where you are. If you have a Linktree, share your Linktree. You never know, you might get a new follower or even a customer. So just pop that into the chat. And also, whilst we're just, and this is the part where I always say, like, I'd love some elevator music for this, as everyone's sessions in.
I've learned my lesson. I'm going to stop singing.
Yeah, we did have a song last time, didn't we, Jeremy? I'm also going to pop a poll live right now. Let's put the first one live. It's just a nice way to kind of get to know who we've got with us today. Obviously we're going to be talking about the Linktree platform, but we're talking about the influence platform as well, so we'd love to know, kind of, do you use one, the other, both? So some questions in there, so just take a couple of minutes whilst everyone is settling in, grabbing their drinks, their afternoon drink perhaps, or their morning coffee.
My afternoon drink might have become my morning drink these days.
It all blurs at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
We've got lots of people joining us here. We've got Alabama, we've got Halifax, Arizona, Alaska, hi. Honolulu, we've got a lovely spread here.
Morocco, amazing.
Oh, awesome. God, time-wise in Morocco, thank you for thank you for being with us. This is commitment.
I know.
This is not
I've been to Marrakesh twice and to Casablanca. It's an incredible country. I love Morocco.
Beautiful. It's not a good time to tell the person from joining us in Morocco there is a recording of this going around tomorrow, but if it gets too late for you, do come up, there will be a recording.
That's fine.
Okay, it looks like we've got a good number of people joining us. I'm sure others will come in, so I'll just give a little bit of a preamble about what we're going to cover today, and then I'll jump in and introduce our speakers. So, Linktree talking about influencers, I guess, and I'll start off by why it's relevant for us to be discussing it. Linktree is a tool for kind of connecting your entire content, connecting all of your content in one unified place. And we actually see a lot of influencers using our platform. We call them verticals. It's our third biggest kind of vertical or user group after creative and business professionals. And it's actually our second highest driver of traffic after brands. So traffic to Linktree profiles all over the world, that's the second highest vertical for traffic. So on Monday this week, I jumped into some of the stats ahead of this, and on Monday this week we saw influencers add 7,500 new links on one day alone. So it's a really, really active kind of user group for us, which is fab. We've got influencers like YouTuber Zoella, we've got food influencers like Melissa Hemsley, fitness and beauty influencers, TikTokers, and we'll cover some of that in the session today. And that spans right from those kind of mega 1 million plus influencers through to the kind of nano influencers who have a really kind of important part in the ecosystem as well, those kind of 1K to 10K audience spans. So I think everyone should be settled in. We've got some nice poll progress going on here. I'll let that run for a couple more minutes. Today, we're going to be looking and picking an expert brain. We're going to be looking at how an influencer can start out, so those really early days, those first steps, how you pick your platforms, so where is your content going, what type of content you're going to be creating, and then on to the next stage of how to actually monetize. Is this going to be a business opportunity, and how can you drive it towards that? Then we're going to discuss working with brands and kind of juggling that path. Also, that's quite interesting for brands who are in the audience. I did notice we've got some brands joining us today, how they can choose influencers and get the right fit as well. We'll jump into some best practice tips, and then we'll just wrap up by having a kind of look at the I guess the climate of the moment and the changing times and what the last few months and even the last week kind of means in the influencer space. But I have spoken enough, and I'm really excited to actually introduce you to our guest, who is Niel Robertson, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Influence.co. It is the world's largest community of influencers, and it's a platform that we have huge respect for at Linktree. It's a platform for brands and influencers that has become an essential tool for networking, for seeking out expert advice, and for finding collaborators. Niel, I hope I have described that in a succinct way. I do tend to ramble. Please correct me if anything.
That's great. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I think you're just the perfect person to kind of touch upon some of those business points for our audience. Also came into contact with the Influence platform through their brilliant newly launched publication, No Filter. Now, do you want to tell the audience? I think that could be a great start point for them.
Sure. So, broadly, our goal at Influence.co, to put No Filter in context, is, we say our mission is to empower the influencer generation, and we really think this is a generational change in how people are creating content and consuming content. So we like to think that we connect influencers and creators, professionals, anybody that works with them. And we do it with supportive community, collaborative commerce, and we really want to enable anybody to pursue their passion. And along the way, when we were building that vision out, we realized that there was just so many incredible stories coming from influencers and creators that were really more about culture than they were about influencer marketing or something that you would consider like a business to business conversation. So we looked around and we realized there was no publication dedicated to influencers and creators as touchstones of culture. And in the music industry, you have Rolling Stone, you have Billboard, and in entrepreneurship, you have Entrepreneur Magazine and Fast Company and all these kind of incredible publications that really help galvanize people's perspective of an industry and kind of a generation. So we were very lucky. We hired the editor of Billboard, and he was the editor of Rolling Stone before, and we launched a publication called No Filter, which is really meant to put influencer and creators on, in a spotlight to show kind of their impacts on culture, media, and I think our timing couldn't have been better. We launched the first issue about a few weeks before COVID hit, and I think COVID put a lot of spotlight on influencers and how they participated in the conversation. We just had a lot of fun finding incredible voices of every shape, size, and helping tell their stories. So maybe we'll talk about that a little bit more, but it's been fun to kind of launch something that we think is going to be a kind of a seminal voice in the overall conversation.
And it absolutely is. I think one of our team has just shared a link to No Filter, but let's wind it back from there. Niel, could you show us the platform itself? Have you got that cute? I can jump into it. I think it's just really it drives the message home as to the power of having a community dedicated to influencers.
I can. Do you want me to just share my screen here?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
That works.
Cool. So our platform is actually quite rich. There's a lot that you can do in it. Our goal is to welcome every influencer, from someone who, I'm here near Hollywood, and we always sort of joke about the movie star to be who gets off the bus and says, where do I go to be famous, right? We want to, anybody that shows up and is an influencer that sort of is thinking the same thing, how do I start this path, all the way up to influencers that are looking for managers or thinking about how to build big brand deals. That's a pretty broad landscape. And so we've built a platform that really takes from a lot of other professional platforms that we admire, like LinkedIn or Dribbble from graphic designers, and sews it together into something that we think is very native to the influencer and creator experience. So I'm just going to show 3 small pieces of it to give a sense of what the community is about. Core to the community is essentially a conversation. So we spend a lot of time looking at Facebook groups and other places that influencers live a little bit. And we were dismayed that most of those groups devolved very quickly into people just putting up links to promote their own Instagram. we thought there could be a much richer conversation, a much richer set of relationships that get built. And so we kind of built our own feed and have kind of our own community approach and guidelines towards it. This is the feed you'll see today that, of course, we're participating in Blackout Tuesday, even inside of our own private community. But if I scroll down a little bit, you start to get a sense of some of the conversations that go on in the community. So, we like to poll people about things like, should brands have access to do whatever they want with your content, right? These are very common questions that people have, and they're maybe embarrassed to ask in some forums because they're not going to ask on Instagram, they're not going to ask maybe in a public forum on Facebook. But if you're surrounded by your peers that are also on this journey, it's very comfortable to ask. And so you just see, like, this has 51 comments on it, right? And all of these comments are super high quality, really interesting. So that's one piece of it. Is just, you show up anywhere you are on your journey, anywhere you are in the world, any type of platform you're on, you're going to find engaging conversation that helps educate you, helps you meet people. And that's kind of the first experience that we give to people. The second thing is we have a very different model than other companies that are in the influencer marketing space. We're not an agency, we don't run campaigns, but we do provide a place for brands to essentially let the world know about what they're doing. So one of the biggest issues that we see is that it's really hard for influencers and brands to sort of connect at the right moment. An influencer might be looking for a certain kind of brand that they want to talk to their audience about, but they don't have a campaign, or a brand is announcing something and they just don't have any way for influencers to see what's going on. So we have almost 50,000 brands on our platform now, and those brands have a page and you can follow them. And then when they're announcing something, a campaign or something they're doing, you can just get alerted about it. And so this for that to be effective, it's about scale. And so now that we're about 50,000 brands, it's very valuable. So we have just lots and lots of brand opportunities in the platform that you can scroll through. I think there's almost 500, which I think gives us a sense of scale that's very different than kind of other companies that are doing one-off brand work, which frankly, a lot of agencies and other platforms use our marketplace aspect of our platform because it's a good way to just get sort of like a lot of attention. The third thing, which is really what the premise of our business was originally, is that we think the most important thing about influencers is their work. There's a huge amount of effort that goes into creating amazing content for brands, being very creative about how you do it. And there's really no easy way to consolidate a view of kind of the work that's going on. And so when our influencers and creators build their profiles, they just add the different collaborations they've done. It could be ones that you've done that are in kind, that are paid. It could just be ones that you've done that are aspirational. Here's how I would want to present Nike. Like, a lot of people talk about brands that they want to work with, and that's fine. You're showing off your skills, right? So we aggregate all that because we have so many people on the platform now. We have over 200,000 people on the platform. We aggregate all of that, and we put for example, all of the content for one brand and everybody who's worked with that brand in one place. So this is an awesome shoe company in Australia called Emu. And these are all the members of our platform that have created content for this brand. And you can see who they are and the different styles they use. There's just pages and pages of this. So if you want to be inspired, get new ideas, you want to find people to work with, we're spending a lot more time on this sort of very visual side of things because the influencer and creator experience is a visual one. And our original inspiration was, like, LinkedIn just doesn't work for people who work in imagery. And so I think if you kind of remember three things about the platform: a central place to aggregate quality conversations between influencers, creators, and brands, places for brands and influencers to connect and to passively do that. So you don't have to be spending all of your time hunting around for campaigns. They can come to you, or you can find them if you're looking for work. And then a third thing is really a place to showcase and be inspired by the work that other people are doing. And if that turns into collaborations or professional relationships or just better content on your own because you saw something someone did and it changes how you work, our job is done. And we think that's a really unique thing in the that's out there. I believe we're kind of the only platform that really does this. Yeah, it's free. Anybody can sign up. 0 followers to, I think 20 million is the highest follower count we have on the platform.
Wow. Mega stuff.
Yeah, so
that was going to be my next question. Who's it for? But I think that touches the full remit of users.
I mean, we have everything, right? We have big influencers like Jillian Michaels and, Find Us Lost, the big travel influencers and things like that. Loki the Wolf Dog. Some people would know these people in America. But we really, I think, our sweet spot are people with 2,000 to 100,000 followers that are really committing themselves to the craft, committing themselves to making this a professional journey, which we'll talk about. They're going from hobbyist to aspirational professional. That's kind of, I think, where the people that just really love our platform are kind of in that group. But we have something for everybody too.
And what's kind of best practice? What's your advice for people on the platform?
I think best practice is to participate. One of the things that we've witnessed, so we started the company about 4.5 years ago. Tiny piece of trivia, I actually started the company with my co-founders because I watched this amazing Australian fitness influencer named Kayla Itzines create this. She's like a legend. She's in Adelaide, right? And she created this amazing fitness guide that just blew up on Instagram years ago. And I was sort of suspected I could build something similar. So I actually found a fitness trainer here in LA with about 30,000 followers. We built a guide. We literally took all the photography. I taught myself Photoshop. I just wanted to see if I could use the power of her social to sell it. And it went great. It was a hit. We made our money back. And she only had 30,000 followers. And I was like, this is it. I'm all in. We really need to do this. But what I witnessed is that in the early days of the influencer marketing and creator industry, it was pretty competitive. I think people didn't share a lot of their techniques because everybody has these secrets to growth. They didn't reach out to find their community around them and say hey, do you want to jump on my podcast, or do you want to share some ideas? How do you find brands? And there's been this marked sea change in the last 6 to 12 months. I don't know if it's just the scale of the industry, the viability of the industry, but so we see people now really, really aggressively looking for connection. And that's the number one thing I would say is stop trying to figure it out yourself. There are actually people and resources to help, which didn't exist 4 years ago. And I think a lot of people have been sort of battling against, it's a complicated thing to figure out what you should do and in what order. And there hasn't been a lot of public information about it. That's changing very quickly. And so I think that is a mindset change to look at collaborating your way to success as opposed to competing your way to success. That's my advice.
And it's a really tangible sense of that, that as the conversation opens out, you can see that it's benefiting influencers rather than detracting from
yeah. We see even things like influencers that work together on campaigns, right? So when you have a place to go find brands that you want to work with, why not do it with your friends? Why not go out and create content? Why not help each other get better? That is a big difference from even a few years ago. It was a very competitive industry a few years ago.
And I think we'll touch upon kind of platform specifics, but on that, particularly TikTok, they have these kind of tribes and teams of collaborators, which is showing us that this is the direction that influence is moving in. I think it's nice to zoom out now and talk about the kind of scale of this industry, this career path that we have. I saw a stat that by 2022, the brand spend on influencers is expected to be 15 billion. So that just kind of gives a sense of the enormity of the market for influencers. And I think this is actually a stat from your own research coming up, Neil, that it's a career option for 61% of influencers consider this is their career.
Yeah. So if I could talk just a little bit about the Creatorscape, is this an appropriate?
Please, this is a great time. Neil has this amazing research, which I'm excited to share.
Cool. Actually, let me share this graphic in the background because it really, I think, highlights what's going on. So our team not only witnesses incredible growth from a dollars moving to influencers perspective that you stated, we also witnessed this incredible surge of infrastructure to help influencers and creators be successful. And so we went out and documented it. So a gentleman named Andrew Campy built the 2019 version of this, and it was a few companies and a ton of agencies. that you could work with. And we said, we think the landscape has changed. So we went out and sort of did this research project and said, who are all the companies that help from production to monetization to helping manage your business? And we put them all into something we call the Creatorscape. I think there's 265 companies now in the Creatorscape. They're across 15 categories. And the reason that I bring this up is I think the reason that a lot of influencers and creators are leaning in towards this idea of being able to create a professional or do this work as a profession is that the number of different revenue channels that are available to them where they can turn the effort of building an engaged audience into money has blossomed like 1,000 flowers. So I would say that still probably for the average influencer, if the only mechanism available to make money was brand sponsored content, there are some constraints to that, right? There's only so many pictures you can post on your feed before you saturate with a kind of a too brand forward message. There's, you know, still like there's a lot of supply out there. So I think as people start to see these other channels come online, whether it's selling digital goods on Gumroad, like ebooks or Patreon or Substack or membership products, I think the capability of turning this into a career by, you know, we kind of call it the multi-hyphenate, you know, influencer, creator, entrepreneur, having ways that you make money in a few different ways from your audience is really kind of turning the tides positively for people. So we'll I think end up sharing this link sort of in the follow-up. And we have actually all of this data inside of a spreadsheet, all of their Twitter handles, all their Instagram. We make it really easy to find them. And we really encourage you to explore your options here. I find very few influencers and creators are actually very aware of all the ways that they can turn their content plus audience into money. They might just be waiting for the overall brand sponsorship market to get so big that it trickles down enough to them, but they can be much more proactive and figure out what's the right product for my audience. It might be an ebook, it might be a paid community that someone joins. We've organized it all here for you, and hopefully you'll find another way to make money off of your content creation.
And what I love about this is the kind of the shift in the language towards quite marketing speak. Like this is the creator's stack. They pick from these suite of tools and services to build out what their mix is, whether that's around amplification, monetization, networking. It's just this brilliant richness. Something that I wanted to, a poll I want to launch now is, I want to see what the attendees, the audience today prefers, whether you think of yourself as a creator or an influencer. And I know this is this is one that you're keen on too, Niel. We have seen a shift in that language recently. Okay, that's in there, so you can select which.
Oh, you made it hard. You could only pick one.
Oh yeah, I'm not giving people options. So much as creator is much preferred so far. So get your votes in there. Okay, so whilst that's coming in, let's think about the kind of what it takes to become an influencer and what you've seen from the kind of huge span of influencers that you work with. Are there kind of characteristics that are kind of spell out success early on? Like what are you looking for?
So I think one of the things that influencers and creators should ask themselves is, what type of content do I like to create and am I good at? And let me give a few different contrasts here. So I am not good at editing photos on Instagram. My wife loves to laugh at how shutter cringeworthy my photography is, you know, especially as I'm the CEO of this company. But she's unbelievable. She'll sit there and find crazy editing tools and whiten pixel by pixel and like do really beautiful content that gets incredible engagement from her audience. But I like to write. And so, you know, there's a whole piece of writing behind the Creatorscape, and, you know, maybe talk about the piece I wrote on influencers as, you know, disruptors of the media companies. And so for me, trying to be an Instagram influencer or creator is not the right move. It's really to be a blogger. And so one of the things that she mentioned, actually the previous company that I built was a company called VigLink, which was one of the larger blogger monetization companies in the world. We had 2 million bloggers on the platform and helped them sell about $2 billion of products a year through their affiliate links. So I came out of that world. And that's kind of what I knew as influencers and creators first. But even now, if you don't want to create, some sort of perfect aesthetic on Instagram, I think TikTok has become a very great channel because the fidelity is much lower. It's not a pixel by pixel editing platform. It's really a platform for fun. And so there's this interesting contrast between almost like curation of how you kind of look and what you talk about, because you can have only a shot or two a day at it, with TikTok, which is much more kind of easygoing. There's not a lot of lenses and filters, people do edits and things like that. And I just think you have to pick your personality, and then you just should double down on that. I think for a long time, maybe the last few years, Instagram was just a default. And I think that's changing. And so, but I would still consider, of course, YouTube and blogging as very viable ways to do that. That's the first thing that I would do. And then the second thing that I would do is, hands down, there are two levels of influencers. And it doesn't matter how many followers you have, but one leads to the other, which is those who are broadcasting and those who are having a conversation. And the ones that are broadcasting, I'm putting out a picture, I'm letting you give me comments on it, but I'm not saying anything. Yeah. By and large, as they get bigger and bigger, they see their audience engagement shrink. And the problem with that is that audience engagement, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, is becoming one of the most important metrics for brands. And, more data will come online. And I think a lot of what Linktree is doing will facilitate some of that, which is awesome. But for now, there's only a few things that brands can really look at that are a reflection of your audience quality. And so, people that just put incredible amounts of work into commenting on every comment, liking, answering all the DMs, asking Q&As in their stories, showing polls. There's great examples. There's an influencer named Skinny Confidential who just does like an incredible job of constantly talking to her audience. And she was able to transport her community from Instagram to Facebook, and has like this incredibly engaged Facebook community that I think is kind of, the inmates have taken over the asylum, and they kind of just run it even if she's there or not. And that's all because she just put in a really intense amount of work into being conversational. Actually, there's an article on No Filter this issue we just published about her and her journey. And if you read it, it really, I think, is a gold standard for what you should commit yourself to become as successful as she has. And also, it took time. It's taken her 8 or 9 years. So.
And what kind of, on that time front, like starting out as an influencer, how many hours input are you seeing kind of get to that level? Like, it sounds like a very committed path.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a singular answer to how many hours a week. I think the one of the content pieces that we did has some data around this, and we did the content piece because we wanted to sort of like understand what brands thought influencers did versus what influencers did themselves, to sort of show a perception difference, which we perceive was out there. We'll share that link with everybody too. The data is fascinating, but there's no right answer. I think maybe one way to think about your own work is, how much time do you put into creating content, producing content, so doing the edits, organizing your feed, what the case may be, having a conversation with your community, and then finding the right brands. And I think that will shift over time, but I think where you should probably over index your time is really around conversation. And I think it's the thing that people under index. I think content feels fun and sometimes, and it's like what we were talking about a lot, because like that's what you're just constantly absorbing all day. Most people are scanning over all the comments, but that's not actually the highest value time output. The highest value time output is in that conversation.
And is it in doing that work on the conversation that is going to grow your audience best, or are there kind of hacks that you see growing meaningful audiences? What's your stance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I must get a countless number of messages and DMs every single week from our members saying like, how do I grow my Instagram followers? And there's no easy answer to this. And I think if you read some of the pieces on No Filter as we start to interview these successful people, you'll just see that there aren't. It's just a lot of hard work. I will say that there are techniques like any business that you can use. You know, one technique is to use Linktree, and I'm not playing to the crowd here, but we think that Linktree's, you know, we think Linktree is really important to help people show the different sides of their personality. One of the things about platforms is that, you know, there's a lot of incredible Instagram influencers that have very different content on YouTube, because YouTube allows them to sort of have an exposition about something. And people might discover them on Instagram, and without a tool like Linktree, because of the constraints of Instagram, they may never find this other side of them that exists on YouTube. And frankly, someone might love your exposition versus your photography, and vice versa. So I think that's one very obvious, you know, hack, or just good professional discipline. The second thing that I would say is really is, oh, I lost my train of thought here. Is really important is to connect with influencers that are around you, that are in your field, and to become a student of what is going on. I think a lot of times influencers can become very absorbed with their own journey. I understand this. As an entrepreneur, it's very hard to look up sometimes, where you're just whittling away as hard as you can. And, you know, but to actually look around and learn from each other, understand what's working from each other, become a student. I think the tech industry does this really well. People are constantly sharing. Here's a growth hack I did. Here's something I tried on their blogs, etc. And I think putting effort into, whether it's finding it through a community like us, or just DMing an influencer and saying, like, that's great, like, where did you learn to do that? Is a very good use of time. And those things lead sometimes to positive collaborations. One of the most valuable ways that people do grow is sharing each other on stories, not just like kind of raw shout outs, but actually like authentically sharing relationships that have been built on stories for mutual follower growth. We've seen that work really, really well. And you can't do that if you're just looking a couple inches in front of you. So take maybe a half hour of your day to like look at Instagram through a lens of like, what techniques can I pick up here? Not just I'm leaning back and absorbing content while I'm also watching the television.
Yeah. Yeah. And how would you recommend, like, as a start point, how do you pick your platform? Because there's a stat that today's average internet user has 8.9 social media accounts. Would you say get something across all of those, or do you go platform specific and deep? What's your stance there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about TikTok is it's interesting watching large influencers and creators try to move over to TikTok, and to see that it is not, if you know, an audience doesn't necessarily stampede with you wherever you go. Some of that is because you can be successful because of algorithms on one platform versus another platform. And it's also just sometimes like you're good at creating one kind of content or another. Like you might not create content that's very consumable on TikTok or YouTube, or the case may be. So I would say, in the beginning, you know, focus. I think of influencers as small businesses. And so if an entrepreneur came to me and said, I'm thinking of starting a company, and here's 7 products I want to launch, and I want to sell to the head of marketing and the head of sales and whatever, my advice would be, that sounds like a nice big vision. Keep that in mind and go do one thing really well. And I can't help but provide the same counsel when it comes to an influencer creator. Find something that sort of is product market fit for your content, like to use a very like tech startup term, product market fit, and just go get some momentum there, and then figure out how to translate that momentum into other things that you think you can expand with, which is every big, you know, I think someone, you know, Sony, which we all know, their first product was a rice cooker. I think that's fascinating, right? And so, you know, they were good at making rice cookers, and that's how they got their start. So figure out what your rice cooker is, and then, you know, dominate over the next 10 years.
Absolutely. And I guess that leads on quite nicely to a conversation around monetization. I'm going to launch another poll because it's nice to get a sense. I think this one is anonymous, so there's no pressure on this, but it's nice to get a sense of where you're at in your monetization journey. So realistically, what kinds of, if we think of it in terms of salary, I know it's a crass question to ask, like what are the rewards of throwing you all at this?
I mean, how much can someone make? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah.
I would say, I know you're being both serious and a little bit glib, right? I would say the capacity to make $100,000 a year is there now. So if you go on Twitter, you kind of go and start searching around for this concept of 1,000 true fans. For those who have not heard that, the concept is out of your audience that you've built, if you can find 1,000 people that are willing to spend $10 a month on you, you can end up making $120,000 a year. Certain types of influencer creators will find people that can spend $100 a month on them if you have a very specific, professional viewpoint you can give. So I think, and that might be through brand sponsorships or other monetization mechanisms like we're talking about. But I think there's a lot of conversation now and a lot of statistics coming out from companies about that reality. So Teachable published all of the statistics on how many people on their platform make certain levels of money. Patreon does that a little bit. There's a phenomenal website called Graphtreon that actually shows the money that all the creators make. So if you want to go be inspired by what's possible, you can just go look at that. And so I think the capacity to make this, $100,000 a year job, which I think, by all strokes is a very comfortable living, in people living in most places if they're just funding themselves. That's what I would do. That's where I think you can get to. But I think there's some really subtle rewards here that are much more important. I think the reward of being independent, I think is incredible. I think the reward of turning a direct skill set that comes out of your life experience into money has a different tenor to it than I've taught myself digital marketing. I'm really good at that. And I found a job where I can kind of do that thing. And this is what we hear from a lot of big creators. The last thing I'll say is the other reward that's so important is, you hear a lot about creator burnout. And I think a lot of creator burnout comes from people that have focused on content and what it gets them rather than focused on community and what it gets them. Because, I think 2020 is arguably the best year in history to say that like everybody needs some community. And so whether you're making $2,000 or $100,000 or $1 million a year, to have a built-in community who knows you because they follow you and understand you is, can't really put a price tag on that. So I don't mean to be Pollyanna about it, but I think it's true right now. I think a lot of people have fallen back to their community as a source of just stability. And that's great.
And that's something that we see a lot through Linktree and creators and influencers using Linktree is the kind of the richness or the breadth of the tools that they're plugging into their Linktree to monetize, ranging right from, you mentioned Patreon and Substack, the newsletter tool, which is just going gangbusters. And we're even seeing things like tipping on TikTok coming through. There's another platform that does tipping.
A platform called Ko-fi, Buy Me a Coffee. If you look at with the Creatorscape behind us, if you look at the memberships category, and actually this access category, this is for kind of one-off things like Cameo or people sort of paying to get a special relationship with you. But yeah, these two categories here that's your go-to to figure out how to do the kind of things you're talking about.
We have a relationship with the Amazon influencer program. So people who use Linktree and are Amazon's influencers, they can plug their stores straight into their Linktree and call special attention to it. And we see some really interesting use cases there, whether it's from the fashion influencers plugging their amazingly curated stores. There's mum bloggers, parenting bloggers. There's all sorts in there. So it's just really great to see that kind of breadth of the way that people are able to use their smarts to bring money in.
I'll say we've done 2 stories in No Filter. One on a lady named Lucy Fink, who used to work at Refinery 29 and turned her day job into her full-time job as an influencer. And the second on the Skinny Confidential, Lauren Everts, that I just talked about. Both of those storylines are very similar. They have multiple different types of ways of making money. that come from having a very highly engaged audience. And so I think if there's anything to sort of take away from the current state of the industry, it's you can build a professional, like a full-time professional out of this, but you have to think about how to monetize multiple ways from the audience that you're building. And that this is the, I don't know if it's the dirty secret or just the secret of like all these big influencers. Everybody thinks they're all making $50,000 a post from, you know, by putting something on Instagram. It's not true. What they're doing is they're being very thoughtful about all the different sources and funnels and how they're moving their traffic around their audiences to monetize in lots of different ways. That's just the state of the industry right now. And kind of this is your exploratory guide here with the Creatorscape to go figure out what might work for you.
Absolutely. And a part of that, I move this on to kind of working with brands. Firstly, how does a influencer get in front of a brand? I mean, your platform is obviously a good start place, but is that quite an organic process once they've hit a magic number of followers, or how do they begin that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer is there's actually a lot of ways to do it. We see the people that we admire the most are the ones that are very proactive. I was at an event that we threw here in Los Angeles. It was a bunch of influencers just came to a cocktail hour. And I asked every influencer, how do you get a hold of brands? And she said, I look for press releases for my favorite brands. And I look for the people that are mentioned from that company that are quoted. And I send them an email. I was like, that is such a hot tip. Like, I mean, that's so great, right? And so it's funny because actually that's what I do too. As I get to know my industry, being kind of in the media and entertainment industry, I'll look for an announcement from Instagram and I'll look for like this person that's the head of this product, whatever. I go straight to LinkedIn, I connect with them, and it's insane how many people that I've met just using that strategy. So that's a very simple way to do it. I think influencers are nervous sometimes they almost sort of gaslight themselves into thinking that they're not, you know, they shouldn't be putting themselves in front of brands. And you know, keep in mind, brands are constantly thinking about who they might want to work with, and getting on the radar is important, you know. So, and a lot of times you can say, hey, I have 5,000 followers. I see that you normally work with people that have larger followers, but I'm really committed to my audience who I know loves my products. I just wanted to get in front of you. So if you ever have opportunities for me to help you, maybe you need you know, commentary on a project you're doing, or someone to show up at a pop-up shop or something like that, you know, back in the days when that happened, I'm here for you. And having started, I think I'm on my 10th company now, you know, I go into that mode every time I start a company because I am a beginner. I am an asker every time I start a company. And it's no different no matter how successful you are. You're still asking, you're still pitching. Lauren Everts isn't just sitting there and having brands send her $100,000, you know, briefs. She's actively going out and pitching those brands. She's thinking about the value she can bring with her audience and structuring it. And I think this is kind of a false perception that at some point in time, like, you just take orders. And I don't think the good influencers and creators do that. I think they're always thinking about how to reach the next level of brand by sending them something that is thoughtful and might, if nothing else, have the brand go, that's a really creative idea. I'm going to keep you in my mind. So that's how we see people be most successful.
Yeah, to be creative. And then I guess on the flip side of that, how does a brand do its due diligence, or how do they select the right influencer for the brand?
So, so for example, on the Influence.co platform, we have lots of different ways that you can search. You can search based on, you know, obvious things like follower counts and categories, you know, pet influencers that have 50,000 followers or more on Instagram who live in LA. You can search on audience demographics. So if you want to figure out, you know, who is a female fitness influencer with mostly fitness female followers in Australia, you can do that too. But then also there's a whole bunch of information that's really buried in people's bios. So we had a brand that was really interested in professional trainers as opposed to just fitness influencers. And they searched on NASM, which is the National Academy of Sports Medicine. They searched on certified personal trainer, and they were able to find thousands of brands in the platform, thousands of influencers in the platforms that actually were very correlated to the kind of person they're looking for. The other thing you can do is, like, one of the things that is on our platform that we do is we allow brands to just say, here's who I'm looking for, and put that out into the community and have people come to them. So they can cast that net and they can put constraints on who can apply. And for a lot of brands, it's actually just an incredible source to just see kind of who comes through the door. You don't have to accept everybody. It's a lot less work. I think the more you know the kind of influencer you want to work with and why, and you can explain that in the brief, the sort of more, kind of less sort of noise and more signal you get out of that. But I think a lot of it is just using a collection of tools and reaching out to people. The last thing I'll say is, one of the things that we did, I think, very intelligent in the beginning is that we built this very visual profile. So our platform is structured around having people show off the work that they've done. Let me maybe just open a profile and show it to you here. I'll screen share. And the reason that we did it is, screen share. We recognize it's very hard as a brand to go onto someone's Instagram and like flip through all their photos, guess at what might be a collaboration, open it up, look at the comments. It's just really time consuming. And so our profiles are actually designed to be an extraction of all that. So this is someone I grabbed off the email page. I literally grabbed a random person. And so I'm just flipping through her content. And so this tells you she's like promoted or worked with these brands. Here's the visuals. And a lot of times people are just making a very quick aesthetic judgment because Instagram is a visual platform. So you can get a whole bunch of information very quickly by looking at who they are, how many comments they get on their branded content, the type of content they create is something you can see your products in, and like just generally speaking, like is their aesthetic, because it could be everything from, super washed out pinks to, the kind of like travel-based content the case may be. And we find that that's actually one of the hardest things for brands to do is to just make visceral decisions. And a lot of it is still pretty visceral, which is why, we like to show influencers what other people are doing so they can get a sense of where their aesthetic stands against each other. But there isn't a simple answer. It's use a collection of tools or a platform like us that tries to give a lot of insight in different ways. And sooner or later, you end up narrowing down that list.
I think something that we're very passionate about at Linktree is kind of giving creators and influencers the tools and the visibility to be able to have conversations with brands around their engagement, their conversion, their click-through rate, and really raising the bar. I think this is probably, and I've completely overlooked, I don't think I even introduced Jeremy to the audience. I'm so sorry. I think we'll just whiz into a couple of the products that the features of the Linktree tool that probably speak to some of these opportunities we've been discussing. Jeremy is my colleague based over in LA. He's the our growth and partnerships manager, which means that he works with the likes of Selena Gomez and all of the creators that we're working towards being. Jeremy, do you want to show? So I know from data that with our kind of influencer users, email signups, SMS subscribe buttons, and video links are really popular. Do you want to take us inside the Linktree app? I think you're on mute still.
Yeah, I'm just nodding politely while I
I
gradually get to where I need to go. But yeah, absolutely. Let me just see. Great. Make sure I share the right page. Perfect. Yeah, so I guess just thinking in the vein of monetization, showcasing the brands that you're working with, all of those sorts of positive things, I want to point towards, I realize I'm not even showing the right examples to necessarily do this, but I want to first show off our email signup integration that pro users are allowed to use. So are able to configure. So someone like Christy Teigen, for instance, is able to collect email signups directly from within her Linktree. So a user who wanted to hear, or a visitor who wanted to hear from her could just sign up right there, submit it, and be good to go. And that is something that's really easy to configure within your Linktree dashboard. So I could just enable the email signup integration here, and then I can either integrate it with MailChimp if I use that and just use my API key from MailChimp, or if I don't use any sort of formal email provider, that's totally cool too. CRM, that's cool too. You could just connect to Google Sheet as well. And you're now able to do a similar thing with collecting phone numbers as well. So right underneath that email sign up button, you would be able to collect phone numbers, and those right now only collect into Google Sheets, but we want to support more going forward. But just in terms of collecting data from your audience in a really sort of active fashion, making sure that folks who are interested are actively giving you their information, Linktree has some really nifty tools to make that really easy. And then, yeah, I guess just in terms of, I would say link tracking in general. So one of the benefits I think of Linktree, whether you're a free user or a pro user, is that you're able to link out to multiple brand partnerships at the same time. So you're not limited to just using all of the real estate in your Instagram bio, for instance, to point to one place. You can point to multiple places at once. And ideally with that increase in real estate, you can also increase your revenue at any given time. So yeah, that's a very basic best practice for something like this, but you're also able as a free user to track the lifetime amount of clicks an individual link has gotten. And as a pro user, you can also see that on a weekly and daily basis. This is not the most popular Linktree, I apologize, but you could see here. Yeah, no, I'm really showing prime examples here. But yeah, this can just give you some really powerful insight. You know, for instance, if a brand isn't always as transparent with you about exactly how many clicks you're generating, for instance, this can be a really great way to put power back in the hands of the creator and the influencer to see exactly how a campaign you're doing with a brand is performing, and then to value yourself accordingly. And then a nifty little side note for pro users is that you are able to schedule these links on the pro tier. So if, for instance, you have a campaign that you know is running for 48 hours, you could schedule it to toggle on and to toggle off at a particular time. And you could do this with as many links as you wanted. So if you had one campaign that ran from Monday to Wednesday and one that ran from Tuesday to Thursday, you could just schedule those campaigns simultaneously and set it on autopilot, not think about it, and you've done all the work already.
Something that I really, really love that kind of empowers the, oh, you've gone out, you can go back in.
Sorry, no, I didn't want to crowd up the space.
I really love the new analytics features that are with the Pro package. There's geo data and there's top referrers, so you can see which traffic, which sites are sending traffic to your Linktree, and you can see where your audience is, as well as CTR. I saw someone ask in the chat, what does CTR mean? It's click-through rate. So it's a metric that measures the conversion of how many people view your Linktree and then click into a link on it. So these are the kind of metrics and insights that are going to really arm a creator or influencer in those conversations with brands. I'm scanning along your top bar there, Jeremy, and you haven't got my favorite dog influencer profile open.
I don't yet.
What do you have against her?
I do want to speak to one thing that Neil mentioned earlier about like finding your platform. And I think that this new little block of data here, which is blank because this is a terrible Linktree to show as an example, will give you better insight into where your traffic is coming from. So if, for instance, you are primarily on Instagram, but you want to expand into YouTube and you have your Linktree on both platforms, you could feasibly use the data you gather in here to understand if, for instance, your traffic on YouTube is increasing, if one audience is significantly more engaged than the other, and sort of make choices accordingly. So this is just kind of another layer that you can use to better understand your audience and take action.
Add a couple things on this. So one of the things I think is amazing about being a Linktree user is being able to say to a brand when you're communicating with them, either applying to a campaign on our platform or just emailing them directly, that I have this capability. I have this capability to highlight highlight your brand or the product that I'm promoting, and then give you some additional data about it. It's an incredible advantage that anybody that doesn't have Linktree is a little bit playing one hand behind their back on this. The second thing I think is really important is if you are using Linktree in a lot of different places, so we see people starting to put it in their email signatures and on Twitter, and so people are they've got it in a bunch of places, they're pushing everybody to a center point, and that then goes back to the brand. You can say to someone, hey, you're actually gonna get this sort of like extra traffic from all over the place. It's coming into my Linktree because I can put something there. The last thing I'll say is, what we think is really powerful for brands to be able to do, because I know so many brands use Linktree as well, is if you're looking for influencers, a lot of brands you'll see like at the footer of their website, they'll have our ambassador program, and that might lead to like a type form or something like that. The great pairing of Linktree and influence.co is to put a link in your Linktree as a brand to say, interested in being an ambassador, go here, and you can point them to your business page on influence.co, which is totally free. And you can have a campaign, which is totally free, that has filters that requires people to have certain qualifications to apply to you. It's a very simple way for a business to kind of glue our two tools together in a very powerful way. And then you'll show influencers that you understand Linktree well, and they'll hopefully come back and pitch you that they know how to use it to your advantage too. So, so much capacity.
Nice pairing there. We're going to jump in just 1 second. We've got a few questions come through in our Q&A. There was one thing I just wanted to kind of show you. Jeremy, could you just click into, you had Dattree's Linktree up. I think a really important thing when we're talking to creators and influencers who spend so long creating their kind of personal brand, and it's such an important part of their offering, to show that with Linktree you can completely customize your profile, you can upload custom images, you can use your own color palettes, and the span of influencers that we work with, that's right across, you know, Twitch streamer influencers. It is, I was trying to get Jeremy to show Tucker Budson, my favorite golden retriever influencer. We the whole remit there. He's not sharing. It's all right. It's okay.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm pulling it up. I'm trying to give you what the fans want.
So, for example, Tucker, he's used the YouTube embed feature there. So when you click onto Tucker's latest video, that YouTube will drop down within the Linktree. So the visitor gets to preview that content, and that kind of thing sort of raises conversion. Dattree is on Twitch. She's using the Twitch integration. So there's just a lovely span of kind of opportunities and uses. And I love that she's got her merch link there flashing on a priority link. It's just smart monetization stuff. Okay, so we should jump into the Q&A. We've got some questions firing through here. We've got a first question here from Letty Moran. Hello from sunny California. Thank you for rubbing it in as it's winter here in Australia. Does your platform support hemp brands? For either Niel or ourselves, Linktree, yes. Niel?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of cannabis hemp influencers and also cannabis hemp brands and campaigns. Partially because it's a heavily regulated industry in the US, and a lot of the social platforms will take posts down when people talk about it, but you can jump on influence and talk about hemp, cannabis, the industry as much as you like.
And then we've got Stephen has asked, is the creator stack on the influence platform? It is, and it's also been linked in the chat notes, and the email that we send through to summarize will have another link to that. It's a really useful tool.
And it's in the footer of our website too.
Everywhere. Someone has asked, are there resources to help creators become influencers? Either one of us can, yeah, Niel, I'll let you.
We're starting to deploy them. One of the things that I'm amazed at, given the industry is 5, 6, 7 years old, is how few resources there are. I'm really surprised. There's a ton of things to help businesses do influencer marketing. So we're bringing some of that stuff online. Influencer Marketing Hub has some good resources for creators. I don't know what you're doing at Linktree, but it's a big gap we see. I hope someone's filling it.
Absolutely, and that's exactly why we're hosting these kinds of webinars, and also our Facebook user group is a really great place just to kind of ask the community, ask us for direction. So yeah, there are resources and there are tools out there. Again, we will link in the wrap-up notes to some great places for that. I've got a question here. Can you get City? Oh, it's gone. Where's it gone? I'm sorry, I'm being okay, that question has gone. So many people, so this is from Papi Kamara, so many people think the influencer business model will be disruptive, if not disappear soon. What are your thoughts on the industry in the next 3 years?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that we built a company that, if you look at the Creatorscape, we put ourselves in a category called professional network, is that we viewed that influencers and creators were going to be what we call the first digitally native profession. It was born out of the internet. And we're not an influencer marketing company. We don't talk about ourselves that way because we think the industry is going to go through a huge amount of transformation. The incredible amount of monetization products that are coming online are going to give influencers a lot of different options about what they can do with the content and audience they're building. And traditional brands sponsored content will continue to grow, I think, at a clip for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But I think you'll see over time that direct consumer relationships will probably take that over. It's fine with us because we're a place where people come and learn and talk and compare notes. And if it's, brand collaborations is great, but also it's just a place for people to continue to develop. So we like the fact that the industry is changing quickly because it means there's always something to be learning and talking about.
I think I've seen you quoted somewhere saying that creators are the future of media.
We think creators are going to completely disrupt the media industry and become themselves little mini media companies. And if you think about yourself that way, it'll lead you down a lot of paths of trying to think about yourself as a business that are valuable.
Fantastic. Just scanning through these, I'll answer one more question and we're pushing time. I'm trying to find one that speaks to the highest number of people here. What is the next progression within the cycle of influencer marketing in terms of building or pivoting from a decline in popularity? Sorry, I think that this one really speaks a little bit to the last question. And maybe we can turn that into the kind of the next platform for influencers looking to pivot. How can they jump on to where audiences are?
Obviously TikTok is all the rage, but there's already new platforms that are popping up. I actually think that people should just think a lot more. Well, one of the best things I think you can do is ask your audience why they like you. Ask your audience what content they want you to be creating for them, because I think it'll get you a really deep understanding of who's paying attention to you. Once you have that, I think you can understand if you should be moving towards YouTube or you should be adopting kind of experimenting on TikTok. I think a lot of people just blindly follow the herd a little bit. They hope they can get some algorithm love, when there's a new algorithm out there. And that's fine for the first few people, but we're kind of past that point already on TikTok. So I would say the more you can be talking to your own audience and understanding what they love about you and what they want from you, that'll be your North Star. Just keep following that.
Fantastic. There's one question there from Danielle asking, can you enable a feature to collect first and last names of subscribers with the subscribe button on Linktree? Danielle, we are working on it. We hear you on that front. I'm sorry if I didn't get to all of your questions. We will try and kind of tweet out this afternoon some more of those general answers. So do come and find us on Twitter. I'm going to wrap now. And Niel, thank you so much for sharing your wisdoms with us today. This has been a really, really lovely chat. And from the comments in the chat room, I think it's been very valuable to everybody here too. So thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. We love you guys. You're a great company. We're really glad to be working with you.
It's always great teaming up. And Jeremy, thank you for joining us. I will be popping some links in the chat as I'm just closing this up to the Influence platform and the Linktree. So come and find us. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, friends.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah,
Bye.
it was awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.